Well, someone woke up feeling saucy this morning, and I look over, it was Taylor Swift.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from somewhere in New Zealand, it's the Dave Benson Show with your host, Dave Benson.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for clicking in and pushing whatever form of buttons it took to get you here today. You've landed on the Dave Benson Show, and this is the #1 independent talk show on the planet. So while you're here, please smash that like, hit subscribe, and tell YouTube's algorithm we're the best thing since cat memes started. All right, let's kick into the monologue.
It's the monologue.
An Indiana woman just set a Guinness World Record with over 2,300 Joker items. That's not a collection, that's Gotham's version of a doomsday clock. If your lounge looks like a deleted scene from The Dark Knight, you don't need home security, you need therapy. And maybe, just maybe, a bat signal over the couch. Meanwhile, a Lowe's store cat went missing after hitching a ride on a delivery truck. They had to use thermal drones and traps to get her back. Basically, Lowe's has become the first hardware store with its own air force. Home Depot's only response? Want some duct tape with that? In South Carolina, a runaway spider monkey was captured with nothing but a hot cup of coffee. It's not animal control, it's onboarding. Somewhere right now there's a Starbucks barista yelling, "Oat latte for Ava the monkey," and no one's questioning it. Over in Maryland, a guy stopped at a 7-Eleven after the gym and walked out $31,000 richer. Finally, a leg day that actually pays off. He left sore, sweaty, and holding a giant check. Ah, the American dream. Now, onto some book news, and not the wholesome kind. The classic Spy Dog and Spy Pups kids series has a website link in the book that redirects the kids to, any guesses? Anyone? Porn! Schools and libraries are currently pulling them off the shelves. Just imagine this, you buy your child a little adventure book and end up Googling hentai. That's not imaginative reading, that's just being betrayed by your bookmark. Cleveland Zoo, this week they welcomed a new baby rhino and asked the public to pick a name. The options so far are Makina, Kenza and Kamari. All beautiful choices. But let's be honest, left to the internet, the poor animal's going to end up being called Horny McHornface. Indianapolis had its own saga. A 30-pound pig is on the run for days because locals kept feeding it. That's not a fugitive, that's DoorDash with hooves. Your order of corn cobs and half a pumpkin will arrive in 6 winks or less. Meanwhile, online global witness tested TikTok with fake child accounts. Even with restricted mode on, the app still recommended porn searches. This is right as the UK's new Online Safety Act kicks in, forcing platforms to do proper age verification. Now imagine being a parent. You lock down the phone, you restrict the apps, you double secure the Wi-Fi, and TikTok still says, would your child like Pornhub or Pornhub Premium? And speaking of bad choices, a Fast and Furious star has just handed himself to the police after animal cruelty charges. We've had speeding, heists, tanks, submarines, but apparently the real crime was against puppies. Coming soon, Fast and the Furious 11, the Humane Society Drift. All right, let's have some heckles. Do you remember the heckles segment? We've brought it back, because we've got some. Heckles.
Heckles.
Now, Jared Wellman, 8899 wrote, "Real soldiers?" I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an insult, or just a pitch for the next Call of Duty game. Either way, thanks for your service. Well, your service to the YouTube comment section anyway. Then, this one's one of my favourites, I really like this, Tom. Zafnath Panir came swinging with My Man, the talk show with a live audience and forced laughter with signs that tell them to applaud and laugh at jokes, is dead. All their ratings are in the toilet, and you adding a laugh track when you don't even have a live audience is just sad. If you want to try and show people you're funny, let your jokes stand in their own merit. Wow, that's not a YouTube comment, that's my annual performance review. Honestly, I had to scroll back up just to check if it wasn't my boss leaving that message. But, points taken. Let's break it down. You said talk show audiences' ratings are dead. Our survey says Jimmy Kimmel Live, around 20.8 million subscribers and over 13 billion views. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, around 33 million subscribers and over 18 billion views. Late Night with Seth Meyers, around 5.1 million subscribers and 3.8 billion views. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, around 10 million subscribers and over 10.5 billion views. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, around 10 million subscribers and about 4.4 billion views. And look, I'll give you credit, that's a lot of passion for a guy with 1 subscriber. I mean, that's not really a channel, that's a burner account your mum set up so you'd feel supported. But here's the thing, you didn't just leave a comment, you accidentally auditioned, and congrats, you nailed it. You're now officially a cast member in the Heckle segment. And finally, at Paolo PY4MM, he gave us This Is Not Good. Short, sharp, brutal, honest. Honestly, Paolo, if YouTube ever makes haiku reviews, you've got it nailed. Let's kick into the YouTube news. They just deleted a channel with 16 million views of AI-generated Bollywood romance videos. That's less Bollywood, more Bollywood. They also killed off the extra subscribe button that used to pop up everywhere. Finally. Half the time you were just trying to pause a cooking tutorial and ended up unsubscribing from Grandma's Lasagna channel. And speaking of YouTube legends, Mr. Beast dropped a video this week that he actually filmed 10 years ago and he scheduled it for release this year. Back then he had 8,000 subscribers. Tom, that's 6,500 more subscribers than us. And his views were around 1 million, which, how far away is that? Well, it feels like light years away from where we are right now. Let's have a quick look at that moment.
Hi, me in 10 years. I'm scheduling this video to upload in 2025. Dude, what if I'm dead? That'd be so weird. If I don't have 1 million subscribers when you see this video, my whole life's a failure. Please, future me, please have 1 million subscribers. I have 8,000 right now. Oh man, I should be studying for a history test, but no, I'm making this video instead. Future me, do you even remember what grade I got on that test? Seriously, if you still remember in 10 years, oh, that's crazy. Watch me not happy married. Or what if I don't have 1 million subscribers? Oh, I'd just be one big loser. Oh, that'd be so awkward. Oh, 10 years, man. It's going to be so different.
And now creators are also getting shiny new toys. Extend with AI, so shorts last forever, live goals for live streamers, and AI drawing tools that turn your sketches into something Picasso might sneeze out. They even improved auto-dubbing with lip sync, which is cute, but if YouTube captions can't spell giraffe, I don't trust them getting my mouth to say it. Let's have a look at the podcast news. Podcast land's been busy too. Wichita State moved its coaches' shows from radio to podcast because if there's one thing sport cliches needed, it's buffering. Cornerstone University launched Wisdom and Influence, which is basically Christian leadership, but make it audio. Somewhere out there, Ecclesiastes just dropped a mixtape. Journalist Marcus K. Dowling launched Culture at Large, recorded live at Nashville Cafe. It's TED Talk meets open mic night. Buy a latte, get an essay on Taylor Swift's cultural impact for free. The podcast Shed Conversations About Race is back for season 3, making my own show look like nonsense about biscuits. The Mississippi Health Department released a new Health Talk episode about breast cancer prevention. Now that's vital stuff, though I imagine the host whispered, "Leave us 5 stars or your cholesterol goes up." And iHeart's new comedy true crime show, Crimeless, features Johnny Knoxville narrating a heist. Because if anyone knows anything about bad life choices, it's the man who once stapled himself to a shopping cart. And speaking of voices, you'll never forget my guest today. He was live on the radio in New York when the Twin Towers were hit. If that's not a front row seat to history, I don't know what is. And if that's not enough, he also managed to royally piss off Taylor Swift. That's right, this man has taken on both terrorism and Taylor, and only one of those is truly terrifying. Let's roll the titles, Tom.
I said I wanna see the Dave Benson Show, and I can't stop and never gonna let it go. I said I wanna see the Dave Benson Show, and I can't stop and
guest has spent decades behind the microphone, producing over 10,000 hours of audio-directed podcasts that have shaped industries, and even penned a book on how to really listen. But there's more. He trained in improv at the Upright Citizens Brigade, ran a marathon to raise awareness for Huntington's disease, co-directed an award-winning horror film, and still finds time to coach business leaders on how to ditch the jargon and connect with people. Whether it's on stage, on air, or on the page, he's made a career out of finding the magic moment in every conversation. Please welcome to the show, Joe Pardavila. Joe!
Dave, thanks for having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. I really appreciate it.
Oh, not a problem at all. Now, Joe, we briefly said this when we started. For you, it is what time in what location?
It is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm in the southern United States in Charleston.
So you're on Thursday as well. I'm on Friday. I'm in New Zealand, so yeah. I'm way in the future. So
yeah. So what are the lottery numbers for tonight? Do you know? Because you're in the future.
14. People will be writing these down. Go for it, guys. What do you usually do on a Thursday night? Not 5 o'clock, but what's an average Thursday for Joe?
Yeah, usually I'm a pretty basic middle-aged white guy, Dave. So I'll put in a good day's work. I'll relax. I'll take my dog for a walk, have some dinner with my wife, watch a little telly, and then call it a night. It's very, very calm, nothing too traumatic. You know, we save the going out and enjoying ourselves for the weekends, but really we have a nice little home that we built for ourselves down here. So it's just very relaxing. We can go take a dip in a pool during the summer months. So yeah, we are living our best life, as the kids say, Dave.
I love it. I love it. Your dog's name's Nathan?
It's Nathan. Thanks, Dave. Yes, and he is sleeping underneath me now. So at any point, a delivery truck comes through our neighborhood, he may actually lose his soul. So I'm looking for that when that happens, because even though he's small, he is very mighty in the vocal department.
Oh, I'm going to look forward to that. Bless him.
You will not look forward to that, Dave. You'll be like, please let a dog do that.
Time out, Nathan. We're going to cut it right there.
Right.
So how did it all start for Joe? So let's go back to Tiny Joe when you were a kid. What did you want to be, and what did you want to? Was this your future, or were you a fireman, a policeman, or what was it?
Yeah, no, David, I was pretty much a one-track mind as a child. I wanted to be in the show business. I no matter what it was, I wanted to be involved in entertainment. That's all I knew from like a very early age. I was the annoying kid putting on magic shows, doing impressions at parties, trying to be the center of attention. My megalomania was out of control as a child. So that's what I wanted to do. But I was a child of two immigrants here in the United States. Didn't really have the so-called connections, knew where to go. But we lived outside of New York City, which is obviously, as many people know, a media hub. So during my early college days, I was like, you know what? I should try to get an internship at one of these radio stations and see if radio is the track I want to take. Because, my options were not limitless. They were quite limited. So I was like, internships, no pay, for very little appreciation. Let me go and do that. And it ended up being the best decision of my life, Dave, because what happened was I was hired for this radio station internship. It was basically your typical internship duties for a radio station, drive around in the van, handing out T-shirts, doing the things you would normally see a radio station intern do. But for whatever reason, the people and the powers that be at the station noticed something in me and saw that I was more than just doing the internship for college credits or going through the motions, because it was something I needed to do. I really had a passion for it. And slowly but surely, they kept giving me more jobs, elevating my kind of stature. And then before I knew it, I was part of the very successful morning show there. And I ended up spending the next 24 years of my life there because of the fateful decision to take that internship.
Wow. So for a morning show, you've literally got to fill 3 hours of space, 4 hours of space between 6, I don't know, whatever time, 4 and 6, 4 and 9, whatever time.
I'll give you the breakdown. It was Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day. So extrapolate that out for 20 years of creating content and waking up at 3 o'clock each morning to prepare myself, go through everything I need to get to in terms of like going through the news, going online, searching for content ideas, using ideas from my personal life that could be used for segments on the show. But yeah, that was pretty much my rinse and repeat for a very long time. I was very fortunate. Not a lot of people work in this industry for a long time at the same radio station or even show for that long. So I was very fortunate. I was very aware of how fortunate I was to have that opportunity to just, one of the great things that I loved about radio, and even, it's almost sort of, you could tie it into social media and content creation now, is like, if you have an idea, you can execute it. Like, it wasn't a big production. Like, if I had an idea for a parody song, me and my co-host would go into the office in 30 minutes, write and record a song that would be on the air within minutes of us like actually recording it. So I love that. And in a way that sort of helped me sort of make that shift from terrestrial radio to now creating content on social media, doing podcasts and that sort of thing. But I just love that. And there were, at the time, this was like late 90s, early 2000s. That was the only place you could do that. Because if YouTube didn't exist, social media didn't exist. If you wanted to have like a big idea like that, it had to be in television or film where you needed a big production, you needed cameras and lights. But with the gift of radio and the ability to do a lot with very little, it just gave me a lot of joy. And it was such a pleasure to have that career for such a long time.
What was one of the because you've got to fill a lot of the time with radio, and you must be the killer of conversation to be able to say, right, we've got nothing, we've got 30 minutes or 3 minutes. That's a long time to talk. We've got 3 minutes to fill, go. And you're just like, right, I've got to talk absolute whatever for the next 3 minutes. What was one of the best ones you ever came up with?
Well, I will say, David, it stems back to what I kind of mentioned earlier about waking up early and preparing yourself, because when I got into that studio and the lights went on, I had basically been preparing for the last hour and a half. So right. There really was no like, hey, we've got this time to fill, because we never needed to fill anything, because not that we scripted the show out or knew exactly when we were going to say something or touch on something. We kind of have like a rough framework of what we're going to do, but we had so much knowledge and preparation put into that show that there was never a moment where like, oh crap, what are we going to do when the song ends? This song's about to end in 10 seconds. What are we going to say? That was never an issue. And I was very fortunate, Dave, to be in New York City working with super uber talented people. So if it ever came to like, we're in a commercial break and like, if we're in between ideas, some person will say, hey, I got this idea for this. We're like, yeah, let's run with that. And then we would all lean on each other. And, you mentioned earlier in my introduction that I did, worked in improv. Having that improv training was very important in terms of being in the now, not thinking about the future, living in the present, and just hiding and exploring those ideas that your scene partners in improv or what your radio partners would do, and just being there in the moment and just being ready to just perform at a moment's notice. All that preparation, Dave, makes you be able to pull that off and make it seem like it's, oh no, we have nothing to say. No, we do. We just don't exactly know when we're going to say it.
That must have been a fun time, because you said in the 90s, New York. So I've been to New York many, many times. And New York, pre 9/11, in the 90s, the heyday of the movies and everything happened. That must have been a really fun time to be in New York, when everything was kind of kicking off. And you'd have been, were you famous? Did people know you? Were they saying, hey, that's Joe from the radio?
Well, here two fronts on that. So first, in the New York piece. So I first started working in the radio station in like 1996, and so this was, as you mentioned, the salad days. So this meant like we can give away, like, no joke, we did $1 million contest where we gave away $1 million on the radio station. We gave away cash prizes of tens of thousands of dollars. We gave away cars. Like, so it was the salad days. Like I tell people, like, I don't want to be one of those people like in the good old days. I don't say it for that, but I say it for like just the boundless potential that we had to like, if we had an idea, we could pull it off, because the money in the media, because at the time, again, pre-social media, everyone, ad dollars went to television, radio, and print. Now there's way more options for people to advertise. There's, radio and TV doesn't make as much money as it used to, just because now these funds are spread out to many things. But that ties into the recognizable part. So when I started, Dave, again, social media wasn't around, but we were there during the infancy of Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And once we were able to present ourselves visually, so posting photos and then eventually videos, that's when the recognition started to happen, Dave. And I would be able to walk around and people would say, hey, aren't you the guy from PLJ, the radio station I was working at? So, yeah, so even though I was on radio and there's that level of anonymity, once social media came around and even like radio station websites, people were able to recognize us more than we used to be. But it was really cool. It was even though, being in New York City, our market was about 16 million people. So we are today, there's niches. So there were people who had no idea who we were. And then there were people who were super fans of us. There was the people in between like, oh yeah, I think I know you from that show. So it was really cool. And, my wife and I would be out to eat and we'd hear people, and they'd be like, and my wife would be like, I think they recognize you. I'm like, yeah, probably. It's okay. And if they said hi or wanted to, take a picture, I was more than happy because it's not like I was George Clooney or Brad Pitt where it happened every day. So the moment that it did happen, I was like, yeah, of course. I would often joke though, they would have me sign something and I'd be like, man, the value of this is only going to go down from here. Like this is not going to be a esteemed collectible that you'll sell on eBay. Once my pen leaves this piece of paper or whatever I was signing, it was like the value it's like a depreciated car. Like when you buy a car and it goes off the lot, that's how my autographs were. It was like as soon as I was done there, that the stock was dropping very quickly on that.
You should have given them the pen as well. You should have been like that. Take the pen. It'll increase. You'll get some money off that.
I should be like, here. Also, I will pay you for letting me give you an autograph.
Yeah. Is that when you find out that they were actually the waiter and they were like, no, it was just the check, sir. I'm sorry.
I never pursued. I always waited because I was like, I knew I wasn't that famous. So I was like, are you sure you know who I am? Like I was always double sure. I didn't assume anything.
So were you working, and this just popped in my head because I said 9/11. Were you working 9/11 morning? Whoa.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So that morning, I believe the first plane struck the tower at like 8:46 a.m. So we were doing a regular morning show, and what we used to do is we used to have, so our radio station was owned by Disney ABC. So we had an affiliate TV station, Channel 7 ABC, and we would always have the TV on while we were doing the radio show, just to keep an eye on, like if there was any breaking news, we would see it instantly. And our weatherman on our radio station was the weatherman on the television station. So all of a sudden we're doing just a regular goofy show. We've already been on the air for over 2.5 hours. We're, winding down to the last hour. And then all of a sudden, breaking news, plane hits the World Trade Center. And this is so early on. This is not, like I said, no social media around. So all of us were literally on the air surmising, like, we couldn't even fathom, like, it was a commuter plane. Like, we couldn't fathom it was a commercial airline. We were like, oh, well, you look at this, some idiot who went in their, like, little rinky-dinky jet drove it, flew their, plane into the, that's immediate. And we were saying this on the air, like, this is, and the aforementioned weatherman, who was also a pilot, we were like, hey, so is there any chance of this happening at being like an accident? He goes, not a chance. And this is, again, as it was happening, he goes, not a chance because of the weather. That day in New York City was a beautiful, like barely it was a beautiful September. Septembers in New York are just stunning because it's sort of like the end of summer, early fall. So it's just a great time to be in New York. And we're like, not a chance. This is intentional. And again, we're rolling live, talking it out. We're like, we still don't know what's happening. And then the second plane hits, and then one of the actual members of our show, again, we're not watching anyone else. This is just us, like a bunch of guys just and girls sitting around a microphone, like trying to figure out what's going on. And one of us said, we're under attack. There's something going on here. And then that's when we started getting the phone calls. Like, because again, sorry to be repetitious, no social media. No one knew how to get a hold of somebody. Cell phones were not working at the time. That was actually, side note, that was like the rise of Blackberries, because Blackberries were actually the only things that were working at the time, because all the phone signals were just completely taken up by people calling because of this tragic emergency. So we were just taking phone calls from people saying, hey, my husband or wife works in that World Trade Center. If they hear this, call home, that kind of thing. And what happened during 9/11 in New York City, the immediate thing to do was we shut all tunnels and bridges. So there was no way in, no way out. So our Midday and other DJs that were going to come on after us couldn't make it into the station. So we stayed on the air till 7 p.m. that night. We were on the air for, 11 hours, just helping people, taking calls from people looking for their loved ones. And we just stayed on. And that became, I actually even open it up in my book. I talk about it. Like, that became an incredibly connective moment for our morning show and our community, because at that time, I think the morning show was together. I was only there for 4 or 5 years, but before that, maybe they were there 3 years. So this morning show was pretty much set. People knew it. It was around in the marketplace for like 7, 8 years. But after that moment, I can tell you the number of times, I joked about the autographs, but the number of times that people went out of the way and said, like, hey, we appreciate you staying on the air all that time on 9/11. And yeah, so I'll never forget that. I remember I wasn't able to go home because I lived in the suburbs, so I had to crash on a friend's couch that night. And then we did it all over again the next day. We were able to do a regular 4-hour show the next day, but we just essentially were there as a mouthpiece for people who were trying to track down loved ones, find out more information. We were connected to a news station, one of our sister stations. So we were able to get, whenever there was breaking news, we would relay that to folks. We were kind of just there. We felt like we couldn't break news, but what we could do there is be sort of a place for people to have like a comforting voice, a familiar voice that could be there and kind of talk them through as well. We were going through it as well. It was a scary time. Our radio station was located above Madison Square Garden, and which is about a block from the Empire State Building. So Midtown Manhattan evacuated. And of course, us being idiots, we're like, nah, we're going to stay on the air. So we stayed on there, and we felt like, we couldn't do much, but what we could do was stay on the air and help people that were listening.
Wow. That must have changed the whole dynamic of the show for a significant period of time for what you were trying to accomplish. It's off to you.
Dave, it's so funny that you said that, because our show was based in humor. Like, we were, we talked about pop culture and news, but it was always with a hint of humor. Like, everything we want to get people to laugh or smile. And it was really strange after that. Like, how do we make jokes, or what do we talk about? Because I know for people who weren't around for 9/11, or even if being in New York, it was all consuming. And I know we feel like everything is all consuming now with politics. It was to the nth degree, because nothing happened. Like, every concert was canceled, every event was canceled, shows and movies were pulled from theaters. So it was a really tough and weird time to be like, when can we start joking? And we tried our best to light humor, and a lot of our humor was based on being self-deprecating and making fun of each other. But even then, it was like, man, we were your typical morning show that did prank phone calls, and we're like, is it appropriate to play a prank phone call a week after 9/11? So it was a very strange time to do it. But again, it's one of those moments where it was like, all we can do is be here. There is no grand master plan of how we, when can we start being funny? It was just one of those things where you kind of rely on your gut and your feel to see when it's time to do that. And slowly but surely, things started to return to the new normal that it would become.
Yeah, I must say, because people want normalcy at that time, because they're like, right, this is going on, I'm dealing with this, but I just want to listen to the radio because that's my normal. And I listen to that every morning, and they need that humor. But then it's, you're absolutely right. At which point do you pivot and turn and say, right, back to normal sessions. Let's uplift people rather than just reach out to them.
And there was a no-win, Dave, because I remember there were times where we would get the call of hey, when are you guys going to start being funny again? And then we would do something, whether it was extemporaneous or just something that we planned that was funny. And people were like, hey, I don't know if that's a good time to be talking about that now. So there really was a no-win, and we totally get it. I mean, when you're in media, and a lot of the times you're always in a no-win situation, but we just tried our best. And again, the folks I worked with are absolute legends. I mean, one of my hosts is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it's I was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing. But again, they were just doing the best they could and guess to see what was the best thing to do at the time.
Yeah. So let's talk about the podcast, because at what point did you leave the radio and move to podcast? What was the shift there?
Yeah, so my radio station was owned by a really not a very strong radio company named Cumulus Media. And at the time, in around the late 20 teens, most radio stations were not making a lot of money, and most corporations that own radio stations were not. But the one thing they could do to make money was to sell radio stations. And at the time, the only people that were buying radio stations were not radio station companies. It was nonprofit Christian stations. So in 2019, my radio station was sold to a Christian broadcaster. So I like to joke that I was fired by Jesus. And the radio station was shut in May of 2019. After the radio station was there for 48 years. I was there for 24 of them. And they flipped the switch one day and it became a Christian music station after many years of being a top 40 radio station. So the transition was not brought on by myself or my performance or the performance of the station. It was just that it was business. It was, and they say show business. It's not show hobby. It's show business. And we all kind of were very fortunate to have that opportunity as long as we did. And then one day they came around and said, we're taking away your microphones and that's it. And then at that point, I had seen sort of the writing on the wall. This is, again, 2019, 6-7 years ago, seeing the rise of podcasting. And I started doing a podcast on the side myself, just doing it with a friend of mine. And because I knew that's where things were going. So I just started to learn more and more about the medium of podcasting. And then after the radio station was sold and I was looking for opportunities, there was a company down in Charleston, South Carolina, that was a publishing company that wrote books for entrepreneurs and helped people become thought leaders. And as the company grew, they started adding media elements to it, like blogging and website development. And then they started doing a podcast program where we would produce podcasts for entrepreneurs. And I just jumped in head first. My wife and I relocated to Charleston. And it was, again, speaking of decisions, one of the best decisions we've ever made. We love it down here. But just the opportunity to work with these folks was just a really cool chance for me to take my skill set of the things I had acquired over my 20 plus years in terrestrial radio and use all of those skills to not only create this content, but also help people who don't have the skill sets that I have acquired over the course of my career. My clients are all CEOs, entrepreneurs, founders, people who are good with money, people who are good with spreadsheets and pie graphs, but don't know the first thing about doing a podcast. So that's where I come in and help people tell their message and share their message with a new audience through the podcast medium.
You are absolutely right in terms of what a training ground. Like most podcasters, YouTubers, myself included, do not have any fundamental training of being in a media outlet for the last 20 years to be able to say, this is when you know how to talk. This is when you stop. This is when you pause. This is how you listen. This is the kind of setup you'll need to sound right and to come across. But man, you're coming from such a big background there into an avenue to say, wow, guys, this is how it's done. And but not just this is how it's done. This is how I can teach you how it's done. That hats off to be able to do that.
Well, the funny thing is about Dave, I always try to be very self-aware. Like one of the things I write and talk about is self-awareness. And for whatever reason, when I made the transition from terrestrial radio to podcasting and working with these clients, for whatever reason, Dave, I was like, oh, I'll just do the same thing I was doing. These people know what they're doing. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And then I realized, like, no, these people, Dave, part of my French, didn't know shit. And that was sort of like the impetus for my book was, what I would do is I'm a big fan of like anecdotes and metaphors. So I wouldn't necessarily teach people how to do things, but I would share like stories of my career that would be anecdotal to what they were going through. And so that's what, and the book thing was, I always say there's two types of people in this world, people who want to write a book and people who don't. I was always in the people who don't want to write a book, but for whatever reason, having this experience of working with like legends to working with people who have no idea what they're doing, it was just like eye-opening to me, like, oh, I have value. I think we all feel like we have value, but don't always know what that value equals, like value equals this. I didn't know what it was until I started working with people that didn't have the experience that I did. So it was one of those eye-opening moments where I was like so used to, and I think this happens to a lot of people. You're so used to being in one place for such a long time, working with the best of the best, that you lose focus and realize that not everyone can do this. Like we kind of took our, me personally, I took my skills for granted. I was like, oh yeah, this is nothing. It's fine. Anybody could do this. And then when I started working with people who didn't have that experience, I was like, oh, I guess I do have some skills that people.
I love your podcast, Good Listen. I was listening to it the other day, and one of my favorite parts was you were interviewing Beth, and Beth is a polyamorous, and I can't remember the name of the house that she had somewhere, but she's into.
Oh, yes. Yeah. La Hacienda in Brooklyn. And for folks not familiar, in New York City, there's this compound of houses where it's a sex positive community where people who are involved in open relationships, open marriages can live, but also mingle. So you don't have to necessarily live there, but they have events and parties that are people that are into that swinger polyamorous community that can just hang out, have parties, and be comfortable with people and feel safe in those environments. And she was a guest on my podcast, Good Listen, and she was great. I mean, that's one of the things I love about podcasting, and I've always been a curious person, Dave, and so I always love to put the focus on other people, because I love to make people feel important. Like, that's one of the things I think I learned from being on this planet and being in radio is like, if everyone made everyone else try to feel important, I think we'd be in a better place. I think we're so much in this very divisive world where everyone's your enemy, everyone's out to get you. And I never wanted to subscribe to that. I always felt like we're all in this together. We can all learn from one another. I opened Good Listen by saying, everyone's got a story. You just have to listen. And I feel like if we just listen more and gave people the opportunity to tell their story, we would find ourselves in a better place in terms of where we are today. I remember when we first moved down here, Dave, Charleston, South Carolina is, I like to joke, is a little blue dot in a big red state. It's a very conservative state, very traditional Southern state. And we were living in this apartment complex when we first came down, and there was this guy who drove this big, giant, like almost monster truck, and he had like QAnon symbols like all over his truck, and it was like the ultra conservative, like deep web, dark web people, believing that people eat babies, all that stuff. And so me, as this typical liberal New Yorker, was like, look at this weirdo, this guy driving a truck. What the hell's going on here? And so again, I always try to give people an opportunity, but those judgments come in, and that prejudice comes in. But one day, the apartment we were living in, we had a pool, and it turned out the guy was sitting next to me, and we just started chatting about barbecuing, about just hanging out and family. And that's when I realized, like, we're all the same. Like, we all have like differences, and we all have likes and dislikes, and believe in things, whether it's religion or politics. But if we give each other grace, that's the sweet spot. Just give each other a break. Don't always be judgmental. Just give people the opportunity to share their art. If they treat you like crap and shit on you, then go ahead and distance yourself. But as long as they're kind and listen to you, I mean, that's how we can create a better community. That's how we give each other a chance to show who we are without having to make people feel bad about who they are.
I fully agree. And doing this myself, the amount of people that I would never have spoken to, would never have connected with, the amount of stories I've heard, and the good heart and the good nature that they've got, man, it's changed my whole world into that same vortex, and my whole viewpoint on life is totally different. So I think you get to a certain age, and I'm guessing we're similar ages, where I cut off anything that's negative and I don't need in my life anymore. I don't have time for. Like you say, if someone's bad to me, I'm like, I've got no time to spend on that. But the people who I'm learning and meeting now, man, I've got so much time for. So I totally get what you're saying there.
It's why I love podcasting. I mean, to me, it was just an easy transition from terrestrial radio to podcasting, but because for the same reasons, it's like the ability to have these connections with people. And I always push back when I hear the argument of like, there's too many podcasts. You know, the podcast is the lower back tattoo of the 90s. And to me, I feel podcasts as art. And I've never heard anyone say, there's too many songs. You know, there's too many songs. Why are there so many songs out there? Or, you know, there's too many TV shows. Like, no one has ever said that in the history of mankind. Yet we feel fine saying there's too many podcasts. I'm like, if somebody wants to have a podcast because two friends, they love football and they just want to do a football podcast, or someone like yourself wants to interview people from all over the world, who cares? Like, what? Like, let them do it. You know, and not to say that a podcast can lead to fortune and fame, because more likely it's not. But as long as you're enjoying the process and having these connections with people, it's a great way to experience life through other people. So yeah, I've always had that pushback about people that say there's too much of this thing, just maybe because it's new, or maybe because the barrier to entry was so low when it first started. I mean, essentially all you needed was like, I mean, you could have done it on an iPhone if you really wanted to, but like, so there was that pushback, but I doubly push back and I say, like, listen, podcasting is a form of art that people can choose to do, not to do, listen, not to listen to, just like any other medium that's predated podcasts over the last 2,000 years.
Yes, I agree. Let's talk about your horror movie. I'm fascinated. What was that all about? How did that come into fruition? That's called The Witches of Bushwick?
Witches of Bushwick. Yeah, you were close. Yeah. So Bushwick is a piece of Brooklyn that's a very hipster community. So being in New York, I would often say that it's a law that you have to take a screenwriting class. Like, if by law you don't take a screenwriting class, they'll throw you in jail. But I'd always been a movie fan, loved film. I still remember like some of my moments as a kid, you know, going to see Star Wars and seeing, you know, I'm old enough to have seen like Empire Strikes Back in theaters, and to spoil the ending to provoke, like seeing that, you know, Darth Vader was Luke's father. Like, I actually saw that in the theater. I was young. I was like, 1980. I was like six years old, but I was still there. But yeah, so always a film buff, Dave. And I took the screenwriting class just to see, because it's one of those things, Dave, and I'm sure you've probably done this before, where you'll see a movie and you're like, I could do that. It seems easy. And then I took the screenwriting class. I was like, oh no, this is really hard. Like 3-act structure and character development and scenes is like very difficult. But I ended up meeting a young lady named Katie who just moved to New York City, and we'd like thrown around ideas, and we're like, you know, we should make something one day. So I was scrolling on Instagram one day, and I kept seeing witches pop up on my feed. And at the time, I mentioned earlier, I was working on a podcast, and my co-host was a professor in New York City and had a lot of friends in New York City. And I kept seeing witches, and I'm like, what? Do you know why I keep seeing this? And she goes, oh, that's because my assistant is a witch. I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, my assistant is part of a coven and is a witch, and I guess because we're friends, the algorithm is saying, you know, to show you these people. I'm like, that's interesting. I've always been like, as an 80s kid, I always grew up with the mindset of they call it like a log line, like, you know, like Die Hard on a bus is speed, you know? So this log line, they call it high concept, was what if Instagram witches met a real witch? So that was the log line. Like, that was my pitch to Katie. I said, what if we did a movie about these Instagram witches actually being confronted by a real witch? And so we wrote the script. We pooled together our own money. It was very expensive, Dave, to film this short film. It's only 19 minutes, but cost a lot of money. But we filmed it, edited it, put it out. We put it in, won a bunch of awards in film festivals. And it was just this really cool thing. And, you know, not to say nothing's come of it, but like the experience of making it and putting it out. And I always remind people this, like, once you make something, no one can take it back. Like, if you do a podcast, if you write a book, if you make a movie, once you create something, that's something. You can't erase it. So I love this idea that I was able to accomplish that, write a book, like do these things that like you can't take back. And not that you'd want to, but like it's out there in the ether. So if somebody wants to read my book one day, they could find it on Amazon. If somebody wants to watch this movie, I'm sure they could find a clip of it somewhere online. But it's just one of those things where I was really proud of it. The timing of us releasing it was not great because we'd actually finished the edit and locked the picture on January 1st of 2020. And we're like, oh, this is great. We're going to go and take this out onto the film festival circuit. We're going to go and meet and greet with people because, again, we didn't have all these contacts. And then, of course, the pandemic happens. All of the film festivals were canceled for the next year and a half. We did the virtual film circuit. And then I actually had some interest in potentially like making it into a series, but it kind of fizzled out because of the great Netflix correction that happened a couple years ago. But again, it's one of those things where it's like a bucket list item that I was able to do and pull off and make. And I was really proud of the fact that I was able to do it.
Good on you. COVID must have been really good timing for you. Not working in the radio station, doing podcasting and kind of more remote things anyway. So that must have worked right into your pocket of, well, I just keep going to, my office, my studio, wherever it is, and keep going.
Well, I will say, Dave, yes, in theory, that sounds great. But I should also mention that I started my new job on March 3rd of 2020. So I relocated a week before the pandemic. So the best timing, Dave, when it comes to starting a new career in a new city. But yes, the idea of like working from home and doing stuff like that was pretty awesome because I used to have to like drag my ass out of bed at 3:00 in the morning and drive into Midtown Manhattan every day for many, many years. So the idea of like working from home, doing stuff like this from home is incredibly appealing for someone like me.
Yes. And one of your magic moments came from when you were running a marathon for Huntington's disease. What was that all about?
Yeah, so it was weird. There was, I think we all have this where we want to do certain things in our life, but we're like, I don't know if I'll be ready for it. And I was, for whatever reason, I was really fit at the time. And I was like, I feel like I'm in good shape, but for no reason. Like, yes, obviously my health and my mental and physical well-being, but I was like, I should do something. I should challenge myself. So I was like, I'm going to try to run. Now, you know what? Not run. I'm going to do a triathlon. So I'm going to do the swim, bike, and run. I'm going to do that because I'm decent with a bike. And then also, I figured like I could probably pull off the swim. Well, I should mention to you, Dave, that my dog Nathan is barking there. There he goes. I should mention to you, I don't know how to swim. I can't swim. So I ended up doing like one of these tough martyr runs. And I remember jumping. And at one point there's like a lake where you have to get across. And I was like, oh boy, I'm going to have to get across this lake. So I jumped off this mountain and I was in the water and I was like, oh, I can't touch the water. So I started like backstroking to the other side of this lake. And I was like, I probably shouldn't do a triathlon. So then I went ahead and I said, you know what? I can't do a triathlon. I'll do the marathon. And I was like, well, I should do this for a reason. And a couple years before that, my father had passed away from Huntington's disease. So I was like, let me go. Here's a reason for me to be in shape. Here's a reason for me to run this. I'm going to run it in memory of my father and raise money for Huntington's disease. And that's what I did. And I was able to pull it off in 4 hours and 12 minutes. I wanted to crack the 4-hour mark, but I was like, I was never able to do it. I ran it again the next year and I got to 4:11. I was like, my marathon career is over. I always tell people who are interested in running a marathon, anybody who's in decent shape can run a marathon. It's the training that is just awful. Like the training part of it is just, it's so much solitude. It's lonely. It's a drag. But like the actual running the race, especially the New York City Marathon, which is, obviously one of the premier marathons on the planet, was such a really cool achievement. Again, one of those things I can't take back. It's done. It's out there. It's like I was able to accomplish that one thing. And if there's anything I do now going forward is like just really promoting the fact of like, just do it. Like a friend of mine, he has like a high school age daughter, and she found out about the film that I've made that we're talking about. And she goes, any advice for me if I want to get into the film industry? I was like, yeah, just make something. You got an iPhone, make it. Just make it. Just make the film. Just do it. And as easy as it sounds and sort of like glib to say it, it's really all it takes. Like if you've looked at anyone who's ever been successful in anything, they did it. Like nothing was handed to anyone. Whether you're a Nepo baby or you're rich, you still have to accomplish and do that thing. And the first step is doing it. So that's, and I think that holds a lot of people back. They find excuses like, oh no, like I want to do a film, but I got to get a camera on. I got to write. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to edit. And like we all can make enough excuses to not do a thing, but that's what separates the doers and the non-doers. Like the non-doers just find excuses to not do that thing. I'm sure, Dave, you doing this show, before you started it, there were probably struggles of like, should I do this? Should I take the time? It seems like a lot of work. I got my life. I got my business and blah, blah, blah. What am I going to do? And like, but you went ahead and did it. And so I always, I think when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, that movie's terrible. That TV show's terrible. Oh, that song's terrible. But as I got older and I realized how much work it took to make something, whether it was a radio show, to write a book, whether it's to make a movie, it's like the accomplishment of completion is just a feeling that you can't shake. Like it's one of those things where it's like, again, going back to the point, like you can't take that back. It's like you did it. So no matter what happens going forward, it's like, yeah, I made a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Joe, I'm going to do fast fire questions on you if you are keen for it. This is kind of like your radio station games more than anything else, I'm guessing. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Coffee or tea to start your creative day?
Coffee, always. Not a tea drinker. I think tea for me is something you drink when you're sick.
First podcast you ever listened to?
Ooh, first podcast I ever listened to. It would probably, you know what? Here's funny. You're in Australia, right?
New Zealand. Close.
New Zealand. Oh, I apologize. Sorry. The first podcast I ever listened to was the Weekly Planet podcast. It was these two Australian guys who were comic book and movie nerds. They're still doing the podcast today, but yeah, there are a couple of Aussies who I found them on YouTube, and then I became one of their active listeners for many, many years now. So if you're into movies and television and don't mind that they're Australian, it's called the Weekly Planet podcast, and it's available on, because I know there is a fractured relationship between the Kiwis and the Aussies. I know there's a little guff there, but if you could stand them, you should check them out.
I will put the details begrudgingly up here so people can see it. Radio booth or podcast studio, where do you feel more at home?
I'd have to say radio station, because it was my first love, and I just loved the idea of having this sort of like cocoon. Like, our studio was dark and had glass, and it was like, and there was almost like a religious experience of being in the room, because it was special. Like not everyone, like we had like dozens and hundreds of staffers in our radio station, but only a certain few could walk into that radio station booth. You know what I mean? And it was like, I remember we'd be like, if somebody ever just inadvertently walked in, we'd all be like, whoa, 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 what's good? Almost as if someone walked in the bathroom. Like that's how being in that radio station was. It was like a special place. So I mean, trust me, I love the fact that I could do this stuff from home, and I could, have my dog next to me and obviously bark through podcasts and stuff. But just the radio studio was just such a magical place. It was a place where collaboration and just fun. And I remember like I have like laugh lines, because I spent like a majority of my life just laughing and having fun and smiling. So the radio station is definitely number one for me.
Awesome. The most memorable guest you ever interviewed?
Well, this is not a fast one. Do you want me to share my Taylor Swift story?
Ooh, let's do it.
All right. I apologize. I know this is fast five, but a few years ago when she would put out her 1989 album, she'd come to visit our station. But the day before she was coming, her record label called and said, hey, I know you guys video record the interviews and you post them online, but she has some stipulations, and the stipulation is that we can only record the first 90 seconds of the interview. Not we can post 90 seconds of the interview. We can only record the first 90 seconds of the interview. And as you know, as someone who interviews people a lot, the first 90 seconds are not the best part of the interview. I'm sure the first 90 seconds of this, Dave, were pretty awful. But I will tell you that, like, I was like, what? This is BS. And for whatever reason, it really bothered me. Again, I try to be very self-aware and know my place in this world, but for whatever reason, it really rubbed me the wrong way. So the morning of the interview, she walks in, she's got her own little, I wouldn't say an entourage, but she's got a group of people with her. And her publicist walks into the studio, and I'm where I was standing in the booth. My videographer was standing to the left of me, so he can get all the angles. And so she makes a beeline straight to the videographer, taps him on the shoulder, and says, "Hey, just a reminder that we're only going to record the first 90 seconds of this interview." And he goes, yeah, I understood. And she goes, I'll just give you a little poke and you can stop. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't keep my mouth shut, Dave. And I said, quick question. I understand that we have to stop after 90 seconds, but if there's a really good question and we have a follow-up, is it okay if we keep rolling? And she goes, oh, yeah, we'll see. It's not hard and fast. I'm like, okay, cool. And I couldn't leave well enough alone with Dave, so I go, and, well, if we have a follow-up question to that first follow-up question, will we still be able to keep recording? And at this point, the publicist was like flabbergasted, like, maybe. And then again, couldn't leave well enough alone, Dave. I go, what if we have a follow-up question to the second follow-up question that connects to the first question? Could we keep rolling? And she was just like, she had no answer. On the other side of the room, Taylor Swift was listening to this entire conversation. I didn't realize she was paying attention to me at all. So all I hear is a disembodied voice say, well, someone woke up feeling saucy this morning. And I look over, it was Taylor Swift. Oh, shit. And I was like, oh, shit. And we go ahead and do the recording. And during the entire conversation, she was looking at me like she was like a prey being hunted. Like she was like, this guy is an a-hole and he's going to say something to me and I'm going to be ready for him. So nothing will ever happen, but she was so locked into herself. She was giving her standard answers. Not that she was uncomfortable. It wasn't like that, but she knew that like, this is not a friendly place. Like, I'm just going to be a professional. I'm just going to give my patented answers. This was certainly not the New Heights interview she did with her boyfriend and future brother-in-law. This was a standard radio interview where she was going to get the standard radio answers. And I learned a lot from that. I shared this in the book, and I didn't use this story to bring up the fact that I had Taylor Swift on a show. I bring up to the fact that how important it is to make people, whether it's someone on your podcast, whether on your YouTube show or in real life, you want them to feel comfortable. And if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to share the best parts of themselves. I say, you want people to feel so comfortable that they're willing to go into your refrigerator and take your last beer. That's how comfortable you want guests to be when you're doing anything. Again, whether it's something professional like a podcast or even like a meeting or just having friends and family over. And so I learned from that. I was like, oh shit, I effed this up. I made this all about me, made it all about us, having this video that maybe 10,000 people would watch. Who gives a shit, And instead of it being just a fun, frivolous interview, it was just like a nothing burger. And so again, I know I've screwed up the Fast Five format here, but yeah, I learned so much from that in terms of making sure that whatever you're doing is making sure that no matter what happens, the person that you're with and you're having this conversation with is comfortable at the end of it.
Joe, you can come around and have my last beer. I don't mind. Feel free.
Listen, I don't go to New Zealand much, but maybe one of these days I will come and steal your last beer.
I would love that. And Taylor, if by any random chance you're watching, we would not do that to you on this show. Just saying.
Absolutely. No, you're doing a better job than I did, Dave.
Oh, I doubt that. Okay, what's the dream guest you still haven't landed?
Let's see. Dream guest. I would love to have like a really cool conversation with someone of the ilk of like a George Clooney or Brad Pitt, but not make it about like the career, but like how much their lives are different than when it started. Because a lot of these people that you see, old school like movie stars, like they started from like the ground up and nothing. And one thing I always love, especially even talking now to like entrepreneurs that are successful, it's like the juxtaposition of like of your life before and after fame or life before and after success is always fascinating to me. I have a dear friend of mine, Dave, who started a company selling soaps and candles at like at flea markets and markets and stuff like that. And they were struggling. Like the husband would be an Uber driver at night, and for whatever reason, they obviously made a great product. They built a multi-million dollar body care company, right? And I always love to talk to them about like the life before and after, because before they were like, I don't even know if we'll have to have to, it's fast food for dinner tonight, to then now every kid in the family has a car. And I've always loved that sort of like the before and after of success. And to me, I love that because of just, it's aspirational. Like, I think we all need to aspire for more. And that idea of like, this is what I had and this is what I have now. It's typical American dream kind of thing, but like having conversations with people like that and talking about the before and after, to me, I love that. That is the stuff that really gets me going. And to like finding out like the little thing, like almost like what you take for granted now, that before it was like, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm going to eat tonight, to now being like, oh, I've got a chef who's going to make me dinner. To me, that's really cool, Dave.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with that as well, it's the perception of happiness along that journey. So back when they were struggling, the perception of happiness was when they wouldn't be struggling. But when they've got everything they want, the perception of happiness was when the journey was going through and they were making it to get to that point. And that's what I always find the difference between it. So it's quite interesting. Joe, we've got to run out of time. What have you got coming up in the future? What do we need to be aware of?
Yeah, one of the things, Dave, I've seen, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a big push for short form video. Google just announced recently that they're going to start indexing short form video. So like if you Google someone's name, short form video is going to come up. So I'm going to focus on creating more short form content along with all the podcasts and stuff like that. So if you want to follow me on any of the video platforms, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, you can check it out. If you go to my website, joepardavila.com, you can find all the links to all my socials. So I'll be making a lot of short form video content to again, from the aspirational side of things, like that would help people improve, because I have this running joke that I don't think any of us could change our hardware, but we can update our software. Like we're all like living iPhones. The hardware is probably gonna be the same, but we can definitely find a way to improve our software and become better humans.
Totally agree. Where do you want your details to be shown, Joe? I will put all of them on the screen. Do you want left, right, up, down? Where do you want them?
I'm not much to look at, Dave. You could splash it right across my face if you want. That's totally fine.
Put them all on Joe's. Joe, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. We're going to be back, guys, right after these messages.
And you're saying this is what Tom Cruise does. He doesn't actually get in the plane. He has a green screen behind him and just a joystick. And this works. Does he have it on a desk? Tom, we've got to be real with this. He has it on a desk as well. Trusting you, Tom. You better not put anything stupid behind there. Does he move like this? Feeling it now, Tom. I feel the need. The need for
below, and he tells me where
All right, you better hit subscribe now, or I'm going to turn this show into a live reading of my grocery list. Now, don't test me on this. Couscous is on there twice.